Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into the core of Chapter 14 from our source material to completely demystify Active Directory. If you've spent any time working in IT, you already know that AD isn't just some basic address book. It is literally the sprawling blueprint and the absolute nervous system of your entire corporate network. So we're going to unpack exactly how it works, how you manage it, and most importantly, how to defend it.
All right, let's dive right in. Mastering this architecture is absolutely essential for your IT career, mostly because it runs in over 90% of enterprise environments out there. You literally can't avoid it. It's the core service providing centralized authentication and authorization. Honestly, mastering AD doesn't just make you a better sysadmin, it basically makes you the guardian of your company's digital gates.
So, here's our game plan for tackling Chapter 14 today. We're going to start with the anatomy of AD, move through managing users and groups, check out the infrastructure, talk about leveraging group policy, lock things down with some security hardening, and then wrap it all up with frontline troubleshooting.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the anatomy of Active Directory and understanding the ecosystem.
At its core, Active Directory gives you a single pane of glass. It allows you to manage thousands of users, computers, printers, and security policies without ever having to leave your desk. I mean, think about it. Instead of manually configuring access on every single laptop in a company, AD uses protocols like LDAP to query data and Kerberos for security. This lets you centrally authenticate exactly who a user is and then authorize exactly what they're allowed to touch.
And the way Kerberos authentication handles these logins step by step is actually brilliant. Historically, systems used a legacy protocol called NTLM, but Kerberos is just infinitely more secure. When a user logs in, they aren't just blasting their raw password over the network for anyone to sniff out. Instead, their workstation contacts the domain controller, which validates the credentials and issues what's called a ticket granting ticket, or TGT, that's good for about 10 hours. The client then uses that TGT to request specific service tickets for whatever resources they need. It's a super elegant system that proves identity without ever transmitting your actual password over the wire.
Now, zooming out for a second, your network is structured hierarchically. At the very top, you have the forest. That's your ultimate security boundary. Inside a forest, you have trees, which group your domains together. The domain itself is your core administrative unit. Think of it as the company's main umbrella. And finally, drilling all the way down, you have OUs, or organizational units. These are the logical containers where you'll do most of your daily work, grouping users and computers by department or location. Oh, and a huge pro tip from Chapter 14, keep your OU depth to a maximum of 5 levels, or your policies are going to become an absolute nightmare to troubleshoot.
Moving right along to Section 2. Now that we have the map, let's look at how we manage the actual citizens living inside this ecosystem, your users and groups.
So, an absolutely crucial takeaway here is to never ever confuse these two types of groups. When you create a group in AD, you have to choose its type. Security groups are the ones that actually unlock resources. They carry internal security identifiers, or SIDs, which get evaluated against file shares and apps. Distribution groups, on the other hand, have zero security context. None. They are purely for sending bulk emails. So if you try to lock down a sensitive folder using a distribution group, it literally just won't work.
To keep all those users and groups organized, you always want to use the Microsoft-recommended AGDLP strategy. That stands for Accounts into Global Groups into Domain Local Groups, which are granted permissions. Okay, so what does this mean in plain English? It means you assign your raw file permissions just once to a domain local group. Then you put your users into global role-based groups, like HR staff. Finally, you nest that HR global group inside the domain local group. By doing it this way, you can easily update group memberships from your desk instead of endlessly right-clicking and modifying raw file permissions across 50 different servers.
All right, Section 3. Let's pop the hood and look at the physical engines keeping this whole directory running: domain controllers and DNS.
I really cannot stress this point enough. DNS is not just some nice-to-have network feature. It is Active Directory's nervous system. AD depends entirely on DNS SRV records to locate services. If your DNS breaks, clients literally cannot find a domain controller. User logins fail, group policies stop applying, and database replication halts completely. Always, always ensure your domain-joined machines are pointing to an internal DC for their primary DNS.
While most of your Active Directory database replicates everywhere, meaning any domain controller can authenticate a user, certain tasks are just too sensitive for multi-master replication. That's where your 5 unique FSMO roles come in. For instance, the PDC emulator is the boss handling immediate password changes, while the schema master is the only server on the network allowed to change the structural definitions of the AD database itself. Distributing and protecting these specific roles is what prevents massive database conflicts across your network. Next up is Section 4, the power of group policy. This is where you go from being a standard administrator to feeling a bit like a network wizard.
What's really interesting here is the timeline of how these policies refresh. You don't have to wait around for users to reboot their machines. Domain controllers pull new policies every 5 minutes. Standard computers and workstations refresh every 90 minutes. And they actually do this with a slight randomized offset, so you don't have 1,000 laptops hitting the server and crashing the network all at once. Plus, your core security settings, those are reapplied every 16 hours automatically, even if nothing changed, just to guarantee compliance.
When those policies apply, they follow a very strict sequence: local, site, domain, and finally OU. You'll hear this called LSDOU. Because policies process in this exact order, the last applied setting always wins. That means if you have a granular policy linked directly to a specific organizational unit, it's going to override a broader generic policy applied way up at the domain level. Which brings us to Section 5, Security and Hardening, Defending the Realm. Because with great administrative power comes massive security responsibility. If an attacker breaches Active Directory, they literally have the keys to the entire kingdom. To stop malicious actors from escalating their privileges, you've got to divide your network into 3 strict operational tiers. Tier 0 is the control plane. That's your domain controllers and core identity servers. Tier 1 covers your application and file servers. And Tier 2 is for your standard end-user workstations and laptops. You're going to want to make this your ultimate golden rule. Seriously, print it out and stick it to your monitor. Never use a Tier 0 account, like a domain admin, on a Tier 1 or 2 system. Why? Because logging into a standard workstation with a domain admin account leaves cached credentials sitting right there on the machine. If a standard user's laptop gets compromised by malware, attackers can use tools like Mimikatz to scrape those credentials, instantly escalating their access to take over the entire domain. Always, always use dedicated, least privilege accounts for your daily tasks.
Finally, we've reached Section 6, Troubleshooting and Frontline Survival. Because if you work in IT, you know it's never a matter of if it breaks, it's strictly a matter of when.
You'll want to commit these specific event IDs to memory because your Windows security event logs are your absolute best friend. Filtering for these IDs cuts right through the noise. Seeing a massive spike in 4625? Yeah, you might be under a brute force attack. Event ID 4740 is a total lifesaver for account lockouts too. If you dig into the event details, it reveals the caller computer name, which lets you instantly figure out if a user's account keeps locking out because of a forgotten password on their personal iPhone or a stale mapped drive on some random server they forgot about. So let's see how this builds into your daily toolkit. When servers inevitably stop talking to each other, you can drop right into the command line and use these built-in tools. DDIAG/testall runs a comprehensive health check on a domain controller. repadmin/repsummary will pinpoint exactly where a replication failure is happening between your sites. And NLTest is just brilliant for proving whether a machine can actually discover a domain controller on the network in the first place. So now that you're armed with the architectural map, the security best practices, and the troubleshooting tools we've pulled from Chapter 14, where are you going to begin? The source material actually recommends spending your first week just auditing your environment, running those health checks, and mapping out your current OU structure. From there, you can start tightening up those security groups and standardizing your group policies. The directory is completely yours to manage, so what are you going to secure first? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy administrating.